Good morning, Owen Symes.
Yeah, good morning, Robin. Thanks for having me.
So Owen is an educator, an author, a writer, and he has recently written a book that I found really thought-provoking about sort of what's going on in our world today. Owen, tell us about your thoughts on where we're at today as a country.
So the book I wrote was called He Was Our Man in Washington, A History of the Obama Years. And obviously it covers his presidency. It also covers a lot of the historical context that led up to the events that he had to deal with. So it covers briefly the history of the War on Terror, or the history of healthcare reform, or, the science behind climate change, things like that. And I was really trying to grapple with the 2016 election when I was writing the book, and just trying to get a sense of how did we get a reality TV star as president? It could be for better or for worse, but it's certainly unusual in the annals of American history. They could be business tycoons or lifelong politicians or what have you. It's rare that we've gotten entertainers. Reagan comes to mind, but not too many others. So I found when I was researching the Obama presidency that a lot of the hopes for change that he had articulated so poignantly in 2004 when he spoke at the DNC, and then during the 2008 campaign, a lot of those hopes did not come to fruition under his leadership. And part of that is, the nature of the presidency itself. It's not a radical institution. It's hard to make institutional change. You have a lot of roadblocks, especially when the Republicans, who are already very, very partisan, as we saw under Clinton, are adamantine in their resistance under Obama. I think partly for racist reasons, and partly because it was a continuation of the politics that people like Newt Gingrich had started in the 90s. So it was difficult for Obama to get past the Republicans, to get past his own party sometimes, the Joe Liebermans of the world. But also, as Obama said in his memoirs, he was not a fundamentally revolutionary guy. And so the kind of policies that he brought to the table were oftentimes inspired by or taken directly from Republican or conservative think tanks or ideas. Obamacare, his chief domestic legacy is the prime example there. The things like the individual mandate or the insurance markets came from Mitt Romney, or they came from the Heritage Foundation, among other places. And so even the change that he managed to bring legislatively, which is the long-term change that we need, you can't just do things by executive orders. You have to have legislation behind what you want to do if you want it to stick. So even the legislation he brought to bear was much more moderate, even conservative, than his campaign rhetoric might have suggested. So I think the frustration at that has helped push us in the direction that we see the country going in today.
Right. And you and I were talking off there. There's a distinguished professor emeritus of sociology at the University of New Mexico, Howard Waitskin, who commented about your writing. He said that Symes' analysis helps us shed our illusions so that we can avoid making the same mistakes all over again. Another quote about your book, which I was not aware of. Oh dear. One of the thought leaders actually said, and I didn't know that this is true, but it's a quote, after Obama's 2012 re-election victory, he said, "It's all over for us. The great white nation will never survive another 4 years of this." How did the 8 years of one presidency of Obama tee us up or set us up for the vibe that we have going on in America now, in your opinion?
I think a lot of it has to do with people continuing to question the validity of the status quo. So, you go into the Obama election and a lot of people feel that, that if we can just get the right people in office, then the machinery will turn and change will happen and we'll have progress. And what we found was the guy that we elected wasn't as progressive as we had wanted. The institutional resistance was much stronger than we anticipated. The opposition party was more partisan, more racist, more recalcitrant than is often typical in U.S. history. And so you have a backlash towards the left with people like Senator Bernie Sanders, who are trying to galvanize more grassroots support, do things from the bottom up instead of the top down, organizing more labor militancy, more strikes, trying to get more workplace democracy and things like that, which I think is great. You really can't have political power without economic power. And if your workplace is run like a dictatorship where the boss tells you what to do, that perhaps is not very healthy for the political life of the country. And then on the right, you have, more quote unquote small government conservatives coming out of the woodwork saying the federal government can't solve anything. You have a lot more racists like Donald Trump who are more comfortable having been through, 8 years of the Tea Party. And that quote that you said about the great white nations, Pat Buchanan, they're much more comfortable being in public.
My favorite class at Smith was the office of the president. So I would love to talk to you for hours and hours about the office of the presidency and just what it can and cannot do. You are really inspiring. Thank you for joining us from Michigan this morning. I hope that you teach students to open their minds into various ways of thought. If people want to reach out to you, Owen, and learn more, what's a good way to reach you?
So you can find me, Robin, on Twitter, if you're so adventurous, at Owen_Symes. You can find me on Facebook at OwenDD_Symes, and you can read more about the book at johnhuntpublishing.com and just search for Owen Symes or He Was Our Man in Washington.
Right, and this is your first book, and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful read, really interesting read and thought-provoking.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us, and you have a great day, and I hope all is well in the great state of Michigan.
Thanks, Robin. You have a good day, too.